Recording. Great. So good evening, everyone. This is the Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting for February 13th. We're here I'm going to read out the charts and the key elements from the charter for those who don't know. The role of SAC is outlined in the charter is to play a key supporting and collaborative role by providing input and assistance in examining community challenges and opportunities related to land use, preparation of goals and strategies to implement regional vision, recommending changes in zoning. I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. We start these meetings with the opportunity for the public to make comments on anything that we've covered so far, or anything that's on the agendas that we are going to talk about moving forward. So at this point, I'm going to open up the public comment period and see if anyone would like to say anything. So we'll start over here, if that's okay. Just tell us your name.
I'm Gordon Rester. I live in the community of Lindamore, which is off of Ridgely Avenue. I recognize that you're not dealing with Ridgely Avenue tonight, but all of these comments pertain to the Ridgely corridor development. Development along Ridgely will affect a far larger number of residents than those just living on or conducting business on Ridgely itself. We do recognize the right of landowners to develop their properties and make a profit from the development. However, development of the Ridgely corridor has the potential to create both environmental and traffic problems. The essential character of Ridgely Avenue is low density residential with a few small businesses and 2 large medical buildings. Residents do not want this essential character change. Ridgely Avenue provides transportation for hundreds of houses and is often extremely clogged. It would be inappropriate to increase housing or business density along Ridgely more than a few %, as this would increase the traffic problem. Previous developments on Ridgely, specifically the medical center, have included large impermeable areas. These have resulted in excessive runoff into Cove of Cork, which feeds into the Severn River, which is becoming silted as a result. No developments on Ridgely should include large impermeable areas. Instead, the county, and we will approach the county, should consider approaches to reducing the environmental damage to Cove of Cork and the surrounding habitat. Residents are concerned by an appearance of a close relationship between some members of the advisory committee and the developers who are seeking zoning changes. There's a concept called the appearance of impartiality, and we are concerned that this appearance is not being provided. The county has not assured residents that these concerns, which were conveyed at the February 6th public meeting, will influence their zoning and land use recommendations. This committee should urge that assurance. And finally, and this is mostly directed to the county, several affected Ridgely stakeholders would like another public meeting with OPZ once the draft land use plan is drawn up before that plan goes any further. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see.
And I know you're not doing Ridgely tonight, but
Right.
hopefully these will still be fresh.
Why don't we listen to the rest of the comments, and maybe I can speak for just a minute about what I'm hearing. Who's next?
So I'm Stacia Ressler. I also am with Lindamore once again. No, you're not handling Ridgely, but these comments have to do with everything, although Ridgely is the major impact. We would like you to be sure that you consider when you're thinking about this, the runoff into the bay. I'm sure that this is a concern of yours as it is of ours. As Gordon said, especially with the medical center, when it was put in, we did recognize significant silting in Cove of Cork. And that's a big concern for us, any kind of impact that will create additional runoff into the cove or into the bay. Which brings me to the second point, that there is the appearance that in order that one landowner be advantaged who wants to change the zoning so that he can develop his properties on Ridgely, which is of course his prerogative, but other landowners such as those in Lindamore are being disadvantaged because our cove is something that we've invested significantly in. It is a deep water cove, so if it silts up, it reduces the value of our property. And so we would like to be treated fairly and equally when you're considering how you're going to treat various landowners. And then the third thing is that there are some like wild rumors going around about what this committee is attempting to do or planning to do. And so it would help if you gave some indication of what you're thinking about so that we know what, for example, if you were thinking that Ridgely might be limited to triplexes or quadplexes, I think that maybe the community could rally around that. Whereas if you're thinking that it's going to be zoned for huge apartment complexes or another medical center, I think you would get significant pushback. So if we knew that you were looking at something that we felt was more in keeping with what we could tolerate, maybe you'd have fewer people come to. So if you could give some kind of indication, that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Cordry, also a Livermore resident, and well represented tonight. Some of what I was going to say is already been said, but I'll just cut down this a little bit. But I was at the community meeting on the 6th, was not able to speak because really ran out of time. The meeting sort of broke up and time ran out. And apparently there were stakeholders that were not aware of that meeting, or not informed of that meeting. So I came up at the meeting, but there was a suggestion that maybe there should be some follow-up chance for stakeholder input. And I would just like to reiterate that would, I think, do a lot to help the community feel that this group is listening and hearing what they feel. My biggest concern has already been touched on, which is silting in Cove of Cork. There's a community dock at the head of Cove of Cork, and that already silts in. And out of our pocket, we pay for dredging to keep it at 3 feet down to 1 feet. We dredge it back to 3 feet every few years. And that's really all because the medical centers were built up on the Ridgely border. So that border that was being discussed is the headwaters of Cove of Cork. That's where it all goes. And that needs to be kept in mind. I happen to have a dock, and if I have to keep losing depth at my dock, my property value goes down. And just as soon that not happen. We all get to look at Weems Creek. When you drive by Route 50, you can see the headwaters upper half mile of Weems Creek silted in from the mall and the medical center and all that development. They're kind of the poster child for what happens to creeks in this area when you don't, when you overdevelop. So anyways, I recognize change will happen. Actually, Ridgely Corridor is ripe for improvement and change. I look forward to seeing nice things happen there. That change should be driven by population growth and by evolution of community needs, not be driven by pocketbooks of developers who would like to see it developed. The charge of this group, I assume, is to mediate that and to get it right. There is a perception, as you probably heard at the meeting, that the county does not have a track record for getting that right in the past. I hope that this group will do that. Certainly the stated goals are the right ones. Hope you live up to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Guy. My family is a property owner on North Westgate Road, and the property is included in your yellow dotted box on the presentation from February 6th. I was not aware of the meeting, and my family did not receive notification of the meeting. So one question I would like to ask is how and whether you notified property owners on North Westgate Road of the meeting and the projects. I have reviewed, I was not at the February 6th meeting myself. I have reviewed the presentation from February 6th, and I would like to say that some of the slides presented are perhaps misleading. They are unclear. For instance, the zoning map where it shows the commercial properties versus blocks of yellow. What the yellow is was not explained. I suspect that is residential currently, but there are also different categories of residential property. So I would suggest that you go back and you refine that slide. Additionally, the water and sewage maps that you showed as part of those slides, they use various hatching methods to show the status of the water and sewage through the area. The hatching that you use is also very confusing because you use a horizontal hatching, slash hatching, and a diagonal slash hatching, but you've also changed the orientation of the maps And so it's impossible to tell what you're really trying to depict on those maps. And I would like to suggest that you go back and revise those maps so it is entirely clear what the current water and sewage provisions are. Also, the terminology you use, planned and future. I don't know what the difference between those two terms is. It's not explained anywhere, and to me, planned and future are the same, but they're depicted as being different in some way, but I don't know what way. Finally, I'd also like to request that materials for these meetings be made available in advance of the meetings. I have heard from others that at the February 6th meeting, the slides were gone through so quickly that people did not have the chance to absorb what was in the slides and really prepare for any kind of response to the slides. And finally, I would like to say on the slides, while some of the concerns were listed and they were kind of graded from mentioned infrequently to mentioned a lot, in terms of any kind of development, a couple of concerns that were not listed are things like noise, lighting, other things that come with development. And I'll stop there. I would also, as someone else suggested, like the response period to be extended so that I can submit further comments on that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak from the public?
Thank you. My name is Steve Moulton. I did go to the February 6th meeting and spoke. I appreciate the time. I want to restate that and for the record that I think a main concern for a lot of people that they were not notified of the input request, especially south of the 50 bridge to Weems Creek, and there could be others, I'm not sure. I belong into that. I live in that section of Ridgely, and my concern is not only people were not notified of that south. I do believe that they should be, because it has, it's all one continuous road through there. Ridgely. If you talk about the corridor, why stop it at the 50 bridge? Yes, it's a bridge, but it's not a dead end street. It's a continuous street. A lot of through traffic through there, both ways. So that's a main concern that I want you guys to think about is why were the people south of the bridge to Weems Creek not notified, and they should have an input and be fairly treated along that route. There's a lot of people that have to access that little strip south of the bridge. It's about 146 parcels. Some are state-owned, some are county-owned. But there's quite a bit of parcels that have to access that little strip of road. So if you do anything north of the bridge, it's going to have an effect on that strip. So that's all I ask is to extend the period of get more involvement in those people. I'm calling between the bridges, and just what you want. You want input, we want to give you input. That's.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak before we?
This is the time.
Let me first ask, do we have anybody from who's with us virtually? If so, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I do not see that, so I think we're done. I think let us close let Leo close the public comment period. And
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period and just remind everyone the website that we have in place right now, which is Region 7, aacounty.org.
the other way around. Oh, that's the email address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the website is aacounty.org/region7.
Right. So if anyone wants to make further comments, please feel free to do so through that avenue. Make sure that that's included in the discussion as we consider what our recommendations to the community and then the decision-making body at large are. We don't know what they're going to do. I just want to go back and talk a little bit more about what I'm hearing in the meeting. The intent when we decided to have that meeting was to try and better understand the position of the homeowners and those affected in that community. What they wanted, what their concerns are, what they saw as opportunities. Really, it was a fact-finding mission for us to see what you all thought about what might happen. There has been no decision about any recommendation from this group at all. We haven't even looked at zoning. All we've done is look at strategies, which are things we think Region 7 at large wants to make sure we're considering as we look at the zoning changes. And many of the things that you've mentioned are included. Awful lot of concern from this group about the environmental impact of development, where we haven't even done as good a job as a county as we could have in the past, and what we want to make sure we consider when we make our recommendations. I think the misconception is that there's some plan in place already. I can tell you from this group, there's not. We haven't really taken the time to dive into zoning. We're really kind of in the earlier stages of this, and that will come. We'll talk about what might work better for Region 7 and in particular certain areas like Ridgely. I will say that we hear you. We hear what you're saying. We appreciate very much you taking the time to share those feelings. I wish it wasn't so contentious yet. I wish it was a more cordial conversation, but the information is not missed. We got it. And continue to stay involved and keep yourselves informed. And the Region 7 website is pretty robust. There's a lot of information. And we welcome the comments, and if you see something going in a way that you're not comfortable with, come back and talk to us again. I think with that, I'll close it up by saying thank you for coming, and we appreciate your involvement. And hope that you stay involved so we can make the best choices we can before we do our next steps. So that's my response to that. You left anything out? Did you want to say anything?
No, I had talked, basically mentioned the district that I thought it might after last week's meeting to make a clarifying statement about my involvement. And I don't know whether that serves now or whether we should do that. I'm open to guidance about when and if it should happen.
I mean, I think if you would like to say anything now is as good a time as.
Okay, well, I just wanted to, in light of last week's meeting with the Ridgely neighborhood and surrounding neighbors, and in light of things that I've read and heard in and around our neighborhood since that meeting, I am called to say a few things. I'm Kate Mahood, and I live on Papel Road. I requested to be on this committee. I'm representing, I think this answers your concern, potentially. Somebody's concerned about an illusion of the words you used, appearances. Thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to address that. Carry on. So I requested to be on this committee. I represent myself and my neighborhood along Ridge. It's where I live. It's where I work. I think part of my position here is to represent our neighborhood. I'm a member of the association and have lived there for 25 years. You know, I'm not a big public speaker. I get real nervous. I prepare. So bear with me. I'm going to just read this through real fast. Okay. I understand this committee makes recommendations and offers ideas and suggestions. The committee is not setting law or policy. The county council is the organization that makes decisions and hopefully consider the committee's recommendations, which I think we've all clarified beautifully today. I see this committee and the county as facilitating a process to gather community's views, hence surveys and listening meetings. Last week's meeting made it clear there's a lot of distrust in our neighborhood for the county, and there's also huge passion for protecting quality of life in our neighborhood. There are strong views and really great unity, in my opinion, about limiting traffic making the area more pedestrian friendly, conserving our natural woodlands where extant steep slopes, the wildlife, the waters, the tributary to Cove Court, enhancing air quality, reducing road and airway noise, and maintaining the rural feel and large open spaces between and around existing small residential buildings as the neighborhood currently enjoys these features. And so I want to repeat that learning here and now for all of us. I also know when we first started these meetings, we introduced ourselves way back last year. While it's in the record, I want to address information that may be floating around out there anywhere. I requested to be on this committee and was appointed by our county executive because as a 25-year resident, hard to believe, I understand our history. And I see the challenges that definitely exist. While my current career is in healthcare, I have extensive background in the field of historic preservation, land conservation, architecture, history, and design. I have a master's degree from the University of Virginia School of Architecture. I worked in building conservation in Washington, D.C. for a few years before stepping out of a rather urban world to move to a modest semi-rural hillside where I've been hanging out since. I worked for local historic preservation architects in town before taking a position with the state of Maryland State Historic Preservation Office, the Maryland Historical Trust. I worked there for 12 years before launching my preservation consulting company, where I continue to serve and support organizations, small groups, nonprofits, in local communities with their historic preservation initiatives. I also work for the Maryland Environmental Trust, conserving land, natural resources, and with the West Road Riverkeeper, among others. I've helped organizations write design guidelines for historic preservation, have been committed to historic preservation planning throughout my career. While folks on social media and other online chat groups have indicated that they think I'm on a possible developers team, we're looking to promote development in the area. That is certainly not the case. For 10 years, I have rented 611 Ridgely Avenue, and for 7 of those, I've also rented 613 Ridgely. Both are small, privately owned residential scale buildings that have been beautifully rehabbed, not boarded up, and left for demolition by neglect, as other places in our neighborhood have been. In 2012, 2013, both parcels were then zoned as small business, offering mixed uses and maintaining low density activity that continues to be in alignment with the adjacent residential properties and the history of this neighborhood. I continue to rent them in order to conduct my current career in holistic and integrated health, which, by the way, is completely related to preservation of our local environments. I requested to be on this committee because I care deeply about conserving nature, open space, and maintaining quality of life within this neighborhood. I see it eroding daily. I invite anyone who has questions or concerns about that to come make an appointment and meet with me at my office. Bring it to me in person instead of trying to discredit or make false statements over social media. Folks who know me also know that many years ago, I single-handedly, albeit unsuccessfully, tried to get a larger neighborhood area from Weems Creek, center of Weems Creek, out to Lucy Creek, listed on the Maryland Inventory of Historic Places, even though that's the MIHP. Even though that was never the intention of the MIHP, based on current law, the MIHP would provide some protections from insensitive development. I was thinking forward long ago and have consistently sought to protect the quality and life of natural setting around my home and work within this neighborhood. I thank you, Patrick, for explaining that these matters will be there will be more conversations in March meetings for us, that I will save my additional words till then. I think there is much more to be discussed and shared, as I think we've heard from our guests. It is my concern that doing nothing, not actively designing a future that is beautiful and safe and conservation oriented, that in that case, the whole area is most definitely threatened. While some neighbors are choosing their upside, not the ones here, I'm not saying it, are not necessarily and maybe not taking effective actions. I also hear the county resisting, earlier some more conversations. And so I repeat the request that I heard behind me for another meeting. And I hope that we can bridge the lack of trust there's a litany of prior things that happened in this neighborhood that aren't right and shouldn't have happened. And I think that litany creates that distrust. And I think it's important that, that we try to bridge that. And I hear that voice here, which is very assuring, and I'm thankful for that. I have no more, please understand in the meantime, until those meetings, that I have no more conflict of interest than any of us as neighbors in the region to be on this committee. I have and remain transparent to that end. I'm here human to human to listen, talk, plan, represent my neighborhood in an open process as we're here. So I think it's paradoxical that my career that I actually am now almost a NIMBY. Anyway, it's paradox that, when we get to March, if we do have those meetings, you'll see a photo out the back of my house and see how I do care passionately about what happens on Ridgely Avenue. Thank you so much for listening to this. I know it's a long thing.
Hey, I did see some of those comments, but I don't want you to think that the comments tonight were directed toward you. I would ask the entire committee to consider their connections, because some of the concerns came from the last meeting on February 6th, and what appeared to be chumminess, not between you at all, but between other members of the committee and some of the developers who were present.
Okay, thanks for raising it. I think we all get to look at our relationships and that's part of I think a lot of my career was about not being in my backyard. It was about helping educate groups and people to really look at it at a planning process in a larger angle. And so
I did see the comments that mentioned you, but I did not want you to think.
Yeah, they were spelling me out, so it's all good. I'm just glad I got to say my piece.
The concerns addressed everyone.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I'll speak to that as well, because I think I'm probably the person who's, has the. So I've been doing this work as an architect here in Annapolis and Ingham County for 30 years now. So I know someone in every,
I do.
no more than one person, probably dozens. The nature of my work is to build environment. That's what I do. Build buildings. I think about those buildings a lot before I put them in place, and I think about how they affect me. So yes, I do know Mr. Krause, and yes, I do know Stephen Hyatt, and I know Mr. Hyatt Senior and his father. So they're not the only developers in town, but certainly they're involved in projects. I don't think that means when the county asks for people to come forward to help with the planning process, if they have the background to do so, they should step forward and do it. Realizing, of course, that there are certain instances where maybe I should stay back a little bit when those discussions happen because of the sense that there could be an impropriety. So I'm aware of it. I'm not going to step off the committee because of that. I'm not going to relinquish my role as the chair of the committee. I'll use my best judgment to avoid a conflict, and you can hold me accountable. I can hear about that. If there's a place where you think that's gone in the wrong direction, I'm not going to hear about it. I can tell you I'll do my very best to be fair and honest and open. I want to move forward and continue this process. Do the best job I can to lead this committee to do good things with the recommendations. So that's really what I want. Any questions?
Did this just in the comment expand this? Shucks. Did this just end for the comments?
Yeah, we closed public comment. I'm responding.
Did you mean public comment at this meeting tonight or public comment overall?
Just tonight. Just tonight. We do this at every meeting. We start the meeting, give people an opportunity to share their thoughts. So that's what we did. We'll do it again every meeting. There's always the opportunity to write it. So your comments are important.
And some of you all have written in and we're cataloging every comment, and we're going to share those out with the SAC as we get into conversations about land use and zoning and focusing on that area.
So
I'd like to make a comment. I wasn't at the meeting, but it really upsets me that Catherine felt attacked on social media. This is not the first time this month that I've heard about elected officials or volunteers, community volunteers being attacked at community meetings and being attacked on social media. There is no room for that in this county. There's no room for that in the state. This is awful behavior. And I don't know who did it. And I don't know how to stop them, but I'm appalled. I'm so appalled that that's happening here. I mean, we're all volunteers. We volunteered to do this. We are doing our civic duty, and then to get attacked.
And can I say something else? I felt so badly for the county at that meeting. I just felt that it was a toxic environment, and it was, I'm so embarrassed that for all of us, for everybody, that we weren't able to speak. It takes some of us, it's harder to speak than others, but my point is we need to keep decency and human
That's right.
connection at the heart of it. And I believe, call me a crazy dreamer, but I believe that we can figure stuff out together, and I do feel like that's what this process is part of. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we can disagree with ideas,
Exactly.
but to attack the person who's making or sharing their thoughts and ideas. I mean, Lisa Rodvian just went through this, Stuart Pittman just went through this, and Quiet Waters. I mean, it's just,
Here we are.
it's pervasive now. It's awful.
Well, let me just respond to that. I think that the people who were at that meeting they didn't know what was happening, weren't sure of what the purpose of the meeting was, and who was doing what, and who knew who. And was there a preconceived kind of outcome that people were working towards? And so I understand completely the concern. I get that the perception is possible. I get that. So.
But that's not what Catherine is experiencing. She's feeling attacked personally.
I understand 100%. I'm just saying that I don't think it's public discourse isn't where we'd like it to be. I get it. But at the same time, I understand the concerns of the people in that community, and I'm hopeful that we can work through it and get the outcome satisfies them.
Keep talking.
So let's move on. And if anybody doesn't want to stay now that they've said their piece, they're welcome to leave. I don't want to have anyone held captive here for 2 hours for our fun chat.
You're not talking about the Richland Corridor tonight.
Not tonight.
No, we won't be talking about that at all.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go to old business. So we circulated the meeting minutes from our prior meeting, not the meeting recently, because that's not. So the meeting notes. Can I get a motion to, or is there any discussion of the notes?
I do have a
Corrections?
We had a pretty decently long discussion about affordable housing during that session. Of item 5, there was numerous comments in the Bay Ridge area that affordable housing, I think the changes would change, and I quote, character of the neighborhood. That comment sat with me the last 2 weeks, the last week. I was hoping that rep would be here so I could clarify with her what exactly it means to change the character of her neighborhood and how that would have linked to affordable housing. That comment was not in the notes. And that comment about changing the character of the neighborhood against potential affordable housing is what led to the restrictions on flexibility of land use strategy for flexibility of smaller sites. I don't know why that wasn't in the minutes. Those are very charged words to use. I wanted a better understanding of why she used those words and what it meant to change the character of the community.
This is under item 5 of the notes. Or it's where it should be. Yeah.
And I think we recorded this, right? So we can go back and listen to what she said that.
So let's do this. Given that the question is directed at someone who's not present tonight, why don't we carry these notes forward and see if we can resolve what that was about and have it reflected accurately. Adopt the notes at the next meeting to discuss that. Good. So is there a motion to?
I mean,
We have consensus. We're going to just hold off on that set of meeting notes until we can get that squared away.
we declare it with the second. We're on.
I mean, I think I can do it by consensus.
Okay.
Looks like
I take back my motion.
Yeah. But I should have said. You can tell me if I did this
Yeah, you did it wrong, but that's.
wrong. Well, let's vote.
Very simply,
Yes.
if it's something that deserves a motion, then you take a vote.
Right.
If it's something that you don't do a motion and to accept the minutes, you take a motion and then you just say all those in favor, blah, blah.
Well, let's do all those in favor say.
Sorry.
There we go. Hard hit for me to make a further mess of my Robert's rules of order. It's still working. So thank you. Is there any other old business? I have one item I want to make sure we cover. In one of the earlier meetings, I think it was even the last one, we decided that if members of the committee were unable to attend and missed 3 meetings, didn't let us know that they were going to miss the meetings, that we would remove them from the committee. So we have, I think, one member that hasn't been able to attend for whatever reason, isn't responsive to emails. So we dropped that person from our group. So what does that bring us to, Desiree, now?
That would bring us to 13 members.
Right. So just so I can remind everyone, with the way it's set up right now, with 13 members, quorum is 7. So if we don't have 7, we cannot conduct the meeting. Make it online, that's great. And that counts. But we've only had this once. Question. Yeah.
Sorry to ask this, but you mentioned earlier your charter. Does your
Yes.
charter address removal of members from the committee?
It does. It does.
And
We
is
made,
this one of the conditions for removing someone from the committee?
yes.
It's the only
It's
thing
in our charter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
She mentioned this about terminology, but this is something I find confusing, like affordable housing versus high density housing. And I think part of the confusion that you're experiencing is that people are not clear what some of these terms mean. So that's something like, I don't know, does affordable housing mean high density or what does it mean?
The answer is not necessarily, but often.
It's just something to keep in mind.
Sure, sure.
Are those terms both codified?
Affordable is not in our code.
Workforce is.
Workforce housing
Workforce
is
housing
codified.
is, I mean, high density is based on zoning, yeah.
So that's great. So affordable housing is not defined. Not in our
in our
code, but
We've also talked a lot about affordable housing being exactly what you referenced before. It's triplexes, quadplexes. It's, less frontage, less yard space, so on. It does not in any way, anytime we've talked about in here, it has not been to add apartment complexes.
I don't think that's necessarily true, right? We talked about something in the parole.
In the parole town center.
In the parole
Yeah.
town center, that if you were to get some additional higher density bonus or something in turn of provides.
Limited to that area is what we talked about, high density.
Yeah, because that's really the only area right now. That's the infrastructure.
At the risk of having this more conversational with our guests, I'm going to continue one more question. Over here to make sure.
I would just like to say, based upon the other person's comment, if you're using the word affordable housing, whoever uses it should basically be called out right away to explain what they mean by it and be more specific by it, because otherwise it results in the confusion noted.
Great. I hear what you're saying. Thank you. I think that closes out the old business, does anyone?
Can I make one comment? It's very hard to hear what's going on the remotely. I just want to say, because last time I couldn't come because I had COVID, and it was very hard. So whenever possible, I don't, poor Anna.
I can hear everything great, guys. Loud and clear on my end.
So just,
Thanks,
so we
Emma.
have ordered additional microphones to help.
Oh, good, because I mean, I just felt like.
Actually.
So, we're gonna move into our continued discussion of the draft Region 7 strategies. For those who are not clear about what that is, we've been going through and coming up with strategies to address different concerns this group has after hearing information from people in the Department of Education, people who work with the police department, libraries, roads, transportation, a bunch of things, environment. So we've developed strategies based on those discussions. And, we're going to discuss 4 of those tonight that where we didn't have a consensus on what the strategy said. So let's go ahead and dive into those, Patrick.
Briefly, you'll have seen this slide before. We got consensus on, or we met a threshold of consensus on the majority of the strategies based on the survey that we sent out to you all, the SAC members, ahead of time. We discussed in the last 2 meetings, I think it's 4 strategies in each of those where we didn't reach that threshold. And then there were 4 remaining strategies that we wanted to address with you all today that we felt like needed some follow-up based on comments that you all provided into those surveys, some potential tweaks to some of those strategies. And so we were going to open those up for discussion tonight. And whoops, to change it. And let me see if I can, Leslie, I'll let you start on this one.
Okay. So the first one was a housing strategy. So we reviewed this strategy initially in the January 18th SAC meeting, and it was tabled in the hopes of getting more clarity from HCBS, who was the kind of the one who proposed the strategy. I think the heartburn was really focused on the last 2 bullet points of the original strategy, the last 2 bullet points, which focused on
Impacts on the school.
Yeah, impacts on schools. And so there was concern that, you know, you're making affordable housing, you're promoting affordable housing, but at the cost of potentially you know, impacting schools. So we have proposed that I think just removing those last 2 bullet points might take away the heartburn here. I think the strategy is still good, but it's here for you all to consider. We didn't get any clarity from ACDS on those last 2 bullet points. So this is kind of where we're at.
I think it's appropriate to remove them based on the fact that the school committee is in the process now of going through their whole
Redistricting.
redistricting, and they're going to start with the high density areas. They're going to move on. I mean, why should we interfere with that at all, right?
And if I can back up, I should have said this on the last slide. If you all if we have consensus to advance these, we're advancing. What we're looking for tonight is a vote or consensus to move these strategies forward to get public input and public comment. So it's not these are set in stone and this is what for sure is going to be in the region plan document. We're just looking to advance it to public comment at this point.
Responding to questions earlier, when we're talking about affordable housing, what are we?
So I think what was our previous? It refers to both.
For sure, well, go ahead, I'll let you.
So it can refer to naturally occurring affordable housing. I believe, we went over these definitions at that January 18th meeting. And I think, it can refer to naturally occurring affordable housing, but in this context, when we're saying it's just where we are encouraging, them to contribute to a lower AMI, essentially. It's meeting a threshold that they wouldn't, it's not a market rate unit, it's a reduced rate unit.
So it's something that would be between, so if the average median income in the area was $100,000, it's probably a little higher than that, something like that. So this would be somebody that would be maybe 60% or 60,000.
Correct.
I also add just some clarification. I worked for the city of Annapolis for 23 years. Firefighter, paramedic, and S10 fire marshal's office. I'm actually certified fire inspector. And clarifying and understanding public housing, affordable housing. Public housing was run by the city at one time, but it's now owned by the city or HUD. It's private. They get funding from both. So if development came in, it would be HUD pushing public housing, just so you can clarify who they had that concern. Public housing is not the same as affordable housing. Different governance. Okay.
So just to summarize what I'm reading here, the draft strategy included specific relief for low-income housing as it relates to school capacity testing. And what we're saying is we're not really, as a group, comfortable with providing that type of relief because it could create problems with school capacity, classroom size, that. So we're saying we want to look at affordable housing as to try and figure out a mechanism to be helpful there, but we're not willing to sacrifice school capacity or quality to do that just because it's affordable housing. That's what I'm reading. Does that sound right to everyone? Okay, so I'm going to really indulge myself here and ask you to tell us what you think.
So what I'm thinking, based upon the prior comments, that affordable housing is not a defined term and means different things to different people, and you have not defined it, that the word affordable housing needs to come out of all of this and be replaced with what you specifically mean here, so that your audiences, including this committee and the public, can understand exactly what it is you mean here. And higher density housing doesn't necessarily mean less expensive housing. You can put up a condo development and it can be condos for the ultra rich.
Sure, sure. So
This term is entirely misleading based upon what I'm hearing at this meeting tonight, and needs to be replaced with what you really mean.
Great. Thanks for the input. As I said, I'm indulging myself by asking you a question, really speak your mind. But your point's well taken. You know, if we're going to have these things included in our recommendations, they should be clear to everyone. So as we're fine tuning those.
I can address this too.
It appears in all the county documents and master plans, is it defined somewhere, even in the.
It is defined. It is
Yeah.
defined. I just don't have access.
Yeah.
I don't have access to those numbers. There's
And
there's benchmarks for all of those. There's workforce, there's affordable, there's.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to make sure that that's somewhere. in our
It's in Plan 2040.
yeah, so it's a strategy in Plan 2040 to add that definition to the code
To
specifically.
the code, but
correct?
it is defined in the glossary of plans.
Exactly, so it is, and it will be defined in the glossary of our region plan. So I think some of the confusion too is that these are, we have defined these in previous meetings. And so at the time we originally discussed this strategy, we had defined it, and the definition was, I think, clear in our minds at that time. We are now revisiting that, so it's not defined here, but
Right, but it does exist.
it does exist.
So.
And
can you
share it? Is it in, did you have it there?
Yeah, I can. If I can read it. It's a little.
So it means housing price at no more than 30% of the households in.
Which is the generally accepted definition by HUD as well. So it's across the board in industry, that's cool.
And I would just like to point out for those of you in the audience that are joining us tonight, the committee has received lots of information and education along the way. This process started in January of 2022. So they're familiar, and you know, of course, it's not everybody's forte, so we have to revisit some of the information as we go along. But it isn't just brand new that's being brought up tonight.
We all have background on it based on today.
Notice has been going out since January 2022 to the residents on and right development.
Yeah, this has been a public process, you know, starting with Plan 2040, which was the update to the general development plan. That's a lot of many neighbors are here because they heard about the process. We did seek out, so, you know, specific individuals. It was public process. Lots of them.
So let's get back to our strategy. Do we have consensus on the adjustment that's been put forward here? Or so we kind of agree that this kind of does what it needs to do?
I really think it does what it needs to do. It's good that the public is here so they can hear what is already in the code. It really make this up. So, but it's good for that to be taken back to the thing. And what I'm noticing about this kind of thing, I'll be short, that those people who are causing this situation never show up. So, I really think those who are here, because I think it breaks down the walls, mental walls that have been created.
Tony, thanks. So back to our strategy. Is there a general consensus that we're where we need to be with this? So I'm looking around. Anna, are you good with this change? I don't mean to call you out.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. Thank you.
Great, great. So let's go ahead and adopt this. We'll move this one forward. Let's move to our next one.
Okay, the next one was a transportation strategy. This one actually received that threshold of consensus within the survey. There were some good comments from you all, and one of the comments I wanted to address, and we did put this in the spreadsheet that we sent back out to you all. Comments from you all included things like expanding the continuous third lane from Route 50 onto 97. Some more comments about that. And one was to really emphasize ITS technology, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems Technologies. And so I wanted to, I'm sorry.
What is that?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
That's one kind of
That's one piece of
Yes.
it.
I know smart lights.
Using technology to improve traffic flow, basically, in the garage.
Okay, thank you.
So at any rate, the proposal was just to add that in as a fifth bullet point here. I did want to try to steer us away from recommending very specific strategies here to address that 5097 interchange, just because part of the process is you put your transportation engineers on it, and they would be the ones to really develop the strategy that should advance for further study and then implementation to actually deal with the problem. So I really want to focus on identifying the problem areas here, and these were the 5 that I thought or that we thought could advance based on our conversations in the transportation subcommittee. These can be the priorities for the region. Do we feel comfortable with this? Should we add?
I had one that I did in my initial presentation, and I don't know what road it is, but it's as you continue on down Riva Road. And cross under 50. That's the worst one, I think, in the whole region.
665 and Reba.
Yeah, but it's not.
By the car dealership.
Yeah, past 665. So as you go between,
Farm Supply.
no, that's up here. No, this,
What are you thinking West Street and?
West.
so further down, if you keep,
Barbecue?
yes,
Oh, the
Yes.
turn.
yes,
Okay, so
the
west.
left turn.
Yeah,
Oh,
last year.
it's so confusing. People end up in the wrong
Or the
lanes and it's always jammed up. What street is that?
It's
No,
West
West
it's
Lawn to
West
Reba,
Street
no,
and
West Lawn to Reba.
Reba.
And what goes into the,
Reba
town center.
going like
So
under
the cemetery in the
50 or
middle.
something. By parades or.
Just before you get to the shopping.
Yes.
If you were headed right.
Do we feel like that should be added as a priority?
I'd like it.
area for study and implementation of fix?
If we don't have a
I
problem
think
there.
No problem with that.
I think maybe in light of last week, maybe there was a lot of conversation about reducing, at least preventing increases in traffic along Ridgely Avenue. I mean, you might, if there's a way to put a strategies here, to speak to the traffic flow, or do we want to, would we add that later after our March meeting?
There a traffic flow issue. I heard not increased traffic. That's
Yeah,
a
not to increase.
flow issue.
It's not, is it?
He's saying yes.
Yes, there is.
Where is the flow issue?
The problem is this narrow section for Wing Street. No, it's not in your corridor. It's a very dangerous.
Yeah, that's
part of the region.
That's part of our region.
Is that the
Part of the
city?
region, but it's not,
City.
so these strategies are just
Region.
That's regional.
regions wide. Okay, so yeah, okay, it's in your region.
Also,
But-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's a very dangerous stretch of road. There are many walkers. I live right there, like you know. There are many walkers, no shoulder, no walks. The left side, the east, opposite side of my house is a hillside. And there's absolutely no walk, no shoulder, and there's Navy people running up that road, bikers always going up that road. Lots of traffic going up and down that road. It's a 35 miles per hour that people go 50 down the hill. It's a very dangerous. I've seen 3 people almost get hit coming out of Berkeley, approaching Ridgely, because it's a sweeping curve. And there's a school, private school at the end of Kirkland, that there's a lot of traffic in the morning and a lot of traffic in the afternoon, where people could really almost got hit. Very dangerous. Safety should be a huge concern.
I second what Steve is saying for the pedestrians on that part. It's very dangerous. But also, there's a little section going up to the wellness center that is basically, it's the section that is still named Bestgate, and then it becomes Wilson at the stop sign. And that little section services like 3 big churches and a school, and also the entire community of Lindemore. And that little section has a lot of congestion because it's the only feeder on the north side of the bridge onto Ridgely. On the other side of the bridge on the south side, there's 2 or 3 feeder streets, but that little section of Bestgate is the only feeder on the north side.
I need a question. I want to ask the community. I've lived in Annapolis for a long time. You recall on Ridgely Avenue when there was an access from the community to 50, just before the bridge?
Yes.
Did that cause a problem? with traffic?
I think the local residents
Were they cut off?
wanted it to go away because it was noise and congestion and all that sort of thing. So they just closed down. That's good long time ago.
But it did cause a lot more traffic as a result.
But cutting it off.
No,
No,
But by having it
by
there.
having.
Having it there,
Yeah.
So it's been diverted, that's why.
So I guess we're considering maybe adding 2 other locations. That will be.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, I think that,
I'm fine with it.
yeah. Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I don't mind adding another point to this, because this is talking about specific concerns. This is what this is doing.
These are
It's
things
saying,
we
hey,
should
these are
prioritize,
priorities
yeah.
for us to try and deal with these things.
And this
Deference
allows
to our-
the public to, for more comment, right?
Yeah, this will all be fine tuned, but I would ask that maybe Patrick and Desiree, you could try and synthesize what we're hearing here into another bullet for this strategy of transportation and addressing specific concerns. Do you think you guys could do that for the next meeting?
I can do that, yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to have it developed before the next meeting, because we would like to put these out at the start of March.
Is there a mechanism where we can circulate the revision and do it without?
Probably, I mean, yeah, I think, I can do that.
No, has to be open. If you're making well, if it's just a matter of wording
Yeah, we.
and you
worry about
leave it up
user
to
intent.
us,
Yeah.
and you go ahead and give, say you have a consensus decision tonight on it, and it's just leaving it up to us to word it that way. But so you can't kind of take a vote, come to consensus outside of a public meeting.
You could add two and you'll wordsmith based on what you hear here. So the one I'm concerned about, I'm looking it up. It looks like it's Riva Road. If somebody said it's to West Street, 450 West. Right,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I've got that. So address traffic
Okay.
flow concerns at the intersection of.
And then
West
the other
Street,
one we
Riva
say
Road.
Ridgely Road.
And I could add a draft item if you'd like to invest invest in identifying improvements for safety along Ridgely Avenue. I think that,
Congestion, say,
congestion and safety. Yeah.
oh,
Does that help us move forward?
I think it does. I think that's great. So thank you. I think that's a great way to do it. And to Cindy's point, let's not belabor the discussion to the point where we're delaying getting this into the hands of the public. So I think the motion for the discussion includes the idea of adding those two areas of concern and having those added to our recommendations for the strategy, leaving the wordsmithing to Patrick and Desiree to finish out with some input. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yeah, I think Desiree's essentially done it here. We'll correct that one misspelled word for Riva, but otherwise, I think that if we have consensus on advancing that as the strategy, then we'll put it out to the public.
Do you have a way to enlarge that?
Somebody else go first.
Good.
Let me see, is that, yeah, there's that.
Well done. So invest in identifying improvements for congestion and safety along Ridgely Avenue. So I think that gets us started anyway. And all of this again will be wordsmith more so we get more public input. So please feel free to add it at that time. But I would say that I think we're where we need to be with that.
Okay.
Is there
Thanks, Desiree.
I'm going to assume Kate, Anna's on board unless she says no. So we're going to carry that forward. Consensus item. So thank you. Let's get our next one.
This was, some of the comments on this were actually, I think, spot on. The original strategy was simply support public art wherever possible. And there were questions about what does that mean wherever possible? What does support mean? We responded in the spreadsheet that we shared with you all. But I think based on comments from you all, I might recommend making this a little bit more specific. So the revised version below, support public art, particularly in gathering spaces associated with commercial, multifamily, and mixed-use areas, and along the region's major corridors to strengthen economic development and tourism, enhance a sense of identity, and transform public spaces. And yeah, in this case, it might, the idea of support, it might be in the form of supporting private developments, proposal for, a public art piece, or working with a county agency to secure approvals for art in, the right of way, those kinds of things. So how do we feel about that?
Is this done in conjunction of trying to kind of make the space kind of special as opposed to just sticking a piece of art somewhere? You know, so I've seen some that it just doesn't, you know, it seems to be there, but it's opposed to where people can actually see it, benefit it. Or where it creates its own space, so to speak.
I do.
Be clear.
I think I get what you're saying. Ideally, yeah, these would be planned and not sort of an afterthought.
Yeah.
So the city has a group called Art in Public Places. Is familiar with that?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a small community of people who kind of evaluate the art projects that the community might consider, like the city considers, and
Yeah.
where they might go and what they. I think this is a good starting point, but we may decide to drill down as we go through the rest of the process. Make a recommendation that the county consider that, or they may have something already that I'm not aware of. It might be worthwhile to.
Hate to have comments on everything, but I feel like this is just a teeny bit limiting.
Okay.
I mean, you know, when I think of art, every time I drive down here in Truman and go by the cows, I get a smile on my face. And I'm sorry, they're dressed in Valentine stuff right now. It's, you know, it's nice. And it just feels like this is a teeny bit limiting. I mean, I think we need to support for artwork.
Yeah, what you're suggesting, like in the part that says to strengthen economic development and tourism, enhance a sense of identity, maybe, you know, create joy in our community.
And create joy in our community.
Or
Smiles
create-
on our faces.
Yeah, I don't know what it might be, but they're, you know, or reflect positive.
I mean, this sounds a
values.
little bit prescriptive as
No, I hear
opposed
you.
to,
It's very defined. I don't think it precludes that. I think that there's room for that. That's what I would invite.
I'm
you to
almost hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost hearing you prefer the wherever possible.
well, but I'm willing to go halfway in between.
Well,
I like.
so maybe we keep wherever possible, and it's just particularly, and the idea is like really emphasize in these more public and visible places.
transform
You could
spaces.
leave wherever possible, that would be good.
But
But
it'd
that's
be-
just me.
Okay.
Love art.
I don't think there's much exception to it. We're trying to get it tailored a little bit, so it was meaningful. This is what the thought was, but I certainly don't have a problem with whatever possible.
Anybody have a problem?
Do we have consensus on the answer to that with including wherever possible?
Yes.
That's all right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move that one forward as well.
That leaves us with one.
This is easy, Patrick. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, so there was, in the survey, we also had kind of a comment box at the end for any ideas for new strategy. And we did have several ideas in those comment boxes that came through. Some of them, I think the majority of them, which we feel were addressed in Plan 2040 strategy. So we did look into all of those and kind of thought through them and whether we already had a strategy that addressed it adequately. There was one that we did not have in Plan 2040. We didn't have any in any of our region plan strategies, and just in regards to solar panels at county park, facilities or parking lots. So I did just kind of draft a quick strategy to address that one concern. So it's a new strategy. It's not one we've seen before. So
Right.
I just
We did discuss it, and it did show in a lot of the comments. It wasn't just one person. This is an opportunity for alternative energy sources, demonstration projects, that type of thing. So, seems appropriate based on the last discussions about it in the comments. Does anyone have any concerns about adding this to our strategy? We have consensus. Seeing a lot of nods, I think we're good.
We could add buildings to county parking lots and structures.
Does the county have a solar consultant that can help us evaluate selling back to the grid? How the actual economics of something like this would work?
We don't know the answer to that.
And to that point too, should this say community solar? There's a distinction.
Well, tell me.
To create
What-
community
what is
solar.
that?
So that they're big enough, right? Is it community solar, but they require huge fields?
Well, exactly, John.
Remember, we had an issue where we were against providing tap fees for affordable housing in the county. It's false. This is gonna cost far more than $8,000 tap. Right, to put in, solar panel stations. So the question is like, one, do we have grants to fund this? But if not, how do we do tax? Like, how actually do we want this to happen? Do we have someone to evaluate it? Are we gonna, what are we gonna do with the excess energy? Can we sell it back to grid or so what price? Because we were against providing solar tap fees for affordable housing. But are we for this? And if so, we need dollars on it, right? Because we didn't want to help affordable housing.
So maybe it's more than just identifying pilot projects.
We have
it's
to do a real
exploring
evaluation.
and
Solar's not free.
laying.
Panels aren't free.
I know that the DPW facility in Millersville, that was a capital project that got approved. County funding was pretty, I think it was like 4.1. It was a grant. So I don't know how much it was, but it was a project that got funded.
But maybe we could just say, your strategy and identify, maybe we can get a consultant or something. The county look at this. Right, someone could help us evaluate and understand what would be the most feasible.
Yeah, it's a
Because we don't
cost
wanna go out
benefit,
there-
because you want to look at how much you're going to be saving.
We don't-
If you can supply all the electricity to the county, and then they save the money and pay back, and there might also very well be infrastructure on money. There is for individuals, I don't know if there is for counties. Companies.
In general, if you just think about it, right, I've done lots of too much solar. If you think about it, right, you're gonna have support structure to the solar panels. You're gonna be parking lot, right? You can't just have like a roof loaded. So then you're gonna have to deal with building it, stacking it. So there's real costs, right? Also, the larger the better.
But it's been done very effectively in a lot of places, so at least we can look at what it costs there and what the benefits
Usually
were.
farms have more sun. Yeah. Like California.
Look, maybe if there's a consultant the county
But
has.
it's still worth looking at.
So it's just adding the word explore and plan.
So the county would give us a budget, right? We don't want to be the ones where this way they say, go do it here and it doesn't work. Exactly what Larry's saying, because you have to hear it doesn't get any sun. Because like there's a forest. Makes absolute no sense if we don't evaluate it. We don't want to just identify them.
Well, how about investigating?
The counties have the county provide the funds.
Investigate pilot projects, to electric county owned parking lots and buildings.
Explore viability or something.
Feasibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about parking lot style structures like restores, right?
No, also like parking lots like out here.
Service
Yeah,
lots.
because Arundel Community College has a lot of solar. They have trailers, so back, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Johnsonville, they have a lot of solar.
Well, it's essentially providing a second benefit for this part. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's worth looking at for sure. I'm sure we can just identify pilot programs. It's probably more than investigating.
That's good. Andrea, Patrick did it, that's good.
I'm curious, in our other natural environment strategies, I can't remember, did we talk about, was there one for paving? I mean, along the same lines about using a porous materials in paving projects,
Oh,
things like that. Has anybody raised that? Have one specifically in ours, but that sounds like something we did have in Plan
In Plan
2040.
2040, I believe.
That's
It would apply
what I thought.
countywide.
Thanks.
Is there an approved list of impervious materials? It has to be the way you get it in. right? It was listed that these concerns specifically are pervious, and every developer go get them.
Well, you don't get credit for stormwater management for these covers. From the county. You just don't get it. So, but I think that's being looked at, but right now, the challenge with those is that they're great when they go in, but they must be. So they're supposed to be back every year. Small. Try to stick it down. There isn't a lot. The fear is that if you grant these latitude to developers, and they don't. So the county's trying to figure that out. But there was a time I didn't do that. So do it anymore. So.
It sounds like we've all been working on that, and it's in 2040, so that's not.
We have several, I just looked, we have policy in 4.2 talks about promote development and redevelopment policies that lead to a reduction of impervious surfaces. Those have one that's require projects on county land to utilize pervious materials to the maximum extent practical, including but not limited to green roofs and pervious pavement. But it's
In that mindset of this conversation, consider public-private partnerships. They're gonna be part of this scenario. Consider.
I think this would cover that, wouldn't it? Investigating ways to make it happen.
They almost have to be financially viable. As a county. Doesn't mean it's not a good.
Now, here's the thing though, like you were just saying, as part of this, I don't see it in there. The wording, public-private partnerships. It's assumed right there.
Well, I think it falls under pilot projects because it could be public-private partnerships, and I'm happy to add it. I believe it seems like it's implied, but it's not stated.
Yeah, I can assume you do because I'm sitting here and understand what you're talking.
Yeah, right, right.
But,
Private partnership is something the county owns.
Are you referring to like grant money or, I mean, I know that is something that. for
Grant money is
example,
one thing,
DPW
this is a specific entity. I'm talking about contractors.
Yeah, sometimes on these big buildings, a company will come in and ask to put solar arrays on the buildings with a payback scheme that benefits them.
Okay.
In the short term, it benefits the building and probably in the longer term. So those are the kinds of. I've seen.
I know
But
that
you could add a line to this and
Sure.
possibly explore public-private partnerships. Just so that it puts it in people's minds.
So you can put it right after pilot projects and public-private partnerships.
To consider public-private.
Could put it after funding to say including public-private partners.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Do we want it, do we want it at the end here or after this?
Think of right where you have it, but
Yeah, it's fine just after public or private,
yeah, you're missing a word.
after public.
Sorry. Sorry. Can't deal with two computers here.
It's for me.
Okay.
There a consensus in place for these revisions? Great. So we're going to carry that one forward too.
Okay.
So with that, I think we've hit the four that we wanted to hit tonight. We know that there were some members that weren't any concerns about wordsmithing or adding things to other meetings. And I'll remind everyone, if you have a specific piece that you think ought to be added or changed, in this case, I'd like to be done with this because Patrick and Desiree, you're part of the public too, so if there's specific changes you see, it's very helpful to Patrick and Desiree. If you write down your edits and send them over, just gets it done. So we can discuss all of these for hours. So it's trying to.
If y'all are like me, you're gonna ponder these and in a week or two, you're gonna come up with some new ideas, and that's fine. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're out for public comment, we can gather those then, and you'll have another crack at these at the end of that period when we gather all the comments from the public. Well, in fact, let me, if I can just kind of close this out and just in terms of what the next steps are. We will be, so now we have our draft set of strategies for the region, and we'll put together this survey. Hopefully we can launch it as close to March 1st. I don't even know what day that is, but have it open through the month of March for public comment and input. And that's, yeah, and we'll gather those comments and share them with you at the end of that, and see what kind of revisions we want to make for additions to the strategy at that point. We will include the vision, the draft vision statement that you all agreed to. And I think the point about I think we probably need to make sure that our survey has a glossary as well, to make sure that some of these terms, like you had mentioned, are clear to the public as well. So very good comment there. So that is what we will be working toward by the 1st. Okay. And in terms of our next meeting, we'll hold it here in the Chesapeake Room, Tuesday, March 7th. The next two meetings are there. We had sent a survey around earlier, and we may reach out to a couple of people who indicated there might be opportunities to meet elsewhere. Would you all like to meet elsewhere in the region if there's space in some other places, just to have a different place, or is this a good central location? Just keep it simple in one place here. I can tell you from my standpoint, this is the easiest.
And the parking is easy.
Okay.
I don't think we need that complexity to location.
Okay.
I've already shown up here on the wrong night twice, so. Myself with you guys.
Okay. That's all that I have.
Okay.
So the next meeting is going to be you looking at maps and things, right?
Yeah, we're going to start getting into our land use and zoning conversations. We need to really flesh out all three. We have 3 meetings dedicated to land use and zoning. We need to flesh out how we're going to do that. There's a good bit of background information that we've got to pull together to share with you all and kind of unroll it. I think the first meeting, I suspect the first meeting may be a little bit, or at least some of it will be focused on sort of unrolling some of that background information, and then start to get into the mapping.
Okay, because I have to come in next time, so it won't be, if you're going to be talking about it, it'll be easier.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll put that together and share with you all that more detailed agenda for the next meeting. Move forward. Okay.
Great meeting. So I think we covered everything we wanted to today. Thanks to our guests for coming, and we really appreciate the fact that you're here, and hope you remain involved and engaged, and provide us more guidance as we go through the process. So
Count on it.
that's great. That's great. So with that, I'm gonna Priscilla, do you want to make a motion to adjourn, or can I just say?
No, you can do. End the
Great.
meeting.
So I'm gonna adjourn the meeting.
Very well.
Yeah, I don't have a gap. I have to take my phone. They allow you to use it in a stormwater